welcome to the Big 12 Mafia Show. I'm your host, Nathan Balmer Brown. With me are my co-hosts. That would be Immaculate View and Moen Show. How you guys doing tonight?
Excellent. Doing a
Great.
whole lot going on all of a sudden.
Moen, tell us what's going on in your den there.
Oh, I've just been doing some work on the boat over here and listening to some hi-fi records.
Nice.
Some
I
Benny
like
Goodman.
it. I'm jealous. I wish I could be doing that. I had to work today, so I'm very jealous that you were able to pull that off. You look good. Let's just say that. Along with us, we're going to have a couple of guests tonight. We're going to have Jen Knowles going to be here. And then we're also going to have Douglas Rohan, who's been one of our two legal experts to talk about Florida State. In fact, here's one of them right now.
There he
Doug,
is.
how you doing?
I'm doing all right tonight. Give me just a minute to fix my audio. Let me make sure I
Okay, you
got my
tell
little
us when you're
computer.
ready, and we'll dive right in. I'm just going to get us started by saying thanks for everybody being here tonight. It's going to be a fast and furious however long we're on, because there's so much going on in the news, and we'll try to catch everybody up on as much as we can. The longer you guys have questions, the more we'll be able to answer them for you. So please buckle up, follow us all on Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube, and then turn on your notifications so you know when the next show is going to be on. So I'm just going to dive right in. So I know we have you for a little bit of time. Doug, you take off. I know family's first. You leave whenever you need to. Jen's going to be joining us here in a second, but just why don't you catch everybody up as to where we are today, and then I've got a bunch of articles that I pulled that we can sort of parse through if we have time. So kind of catch everybody up where we are with Florida State and the ACC.
Sure. Well, thanks again for having me on. It's a real pleasure to share this information. As a Florida State fan and attorney, I like to jump in and dive in and just digest this information for myself. And I love explaining it. I love making sure that it's in a clearly intelligible format for all of your viewers as well. The reason why we're in the news again today is because the ACC and North Carolina has filed what's called an amended complaint. Amended complaints are very typical in litigation. It's not an unusual process at all. You'll recall if you watched the last video or followed what was going on, the ACC actually filed their lawsuit first in North Carolina before FSU filed their lawsuit the following day in Florida. So now the ACC, having Florida State's lawsuit, could glean some of that information, and they're supplementing their original complaint to come up with their new and expanded reasons as to why FSU should be penalized, and more importantly, to stop FSU from doing certain things during the litigation. So that's the real big issue that's coming up. ACC is asking a judge to determine, regardless of what the outcome of the trial is, don't let FSU be an active member. They have to sit on the sidelines while the ACC moves forward with all of their business. We also want FSU to stop sharing information. A real contrast between the two lawsuits that were filed. The ACC filed several of their exhibits, what's called under seal. So they filed them with the court, but they asked the judge to keep them private, not make it part of a public record. Whereas Florida State, they filed their lawsuit, threw all the papers up in the air and said, have fun with this. So they're trying to make sure that the FSU and their board of trustees doesn't disclose some of that privileged and private information that's involved in the ACC and ESPN contracts.
So this first tweet I saw, and there's a pair of them, but this first tweet that I saw go out, I'm just going to read it real quick. It says, "This part actually gets me excited. It will increase the urgency of the case because the court will not want to subjugate a member to that organization for an extended amount of time, expended period of time, without any input to the management." And then in the second part of that, you said, "This also discourages other members from following suit in these claims, seeming a very defensive position to take when you know how you have a losing argument."
Yeah, so that's what I'm positioning this as a response and saying. I think that this filing really shows the weakness of the ACC's position. So the first thing that they're arguing is, not only is this a valid contract, but you specifically stated in your contract that you wouldn't challenge the grant of rights. You've now done that. So that in and of itself is an active breach of the contract. Everything else, the declaratory judgment action, you will remember, you're trying to get a judge to decide what happens if we breach the contract. Is the grant of rights valid? The ACC is now arguing because you even filed this challenge, now you're in breach. But what the other part of this is the ACC trying desperately to discourage any other members from following suit and filing. So they're trying to penalize Florida State on the front end and telling Clemson, telling Virginia, telling Miami that, look, if you're thinking about doing this too, we're going to smack you pretty hard, set you to the side, and not let you discuss any ACC business while this litigation is pending.
Has that ever happened before? Are we dealing with new law?
No, well, yes and no. So you asked two different questions in the same sentence.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't
dealing-
trying to trick you.
No, it's not. You may not have even realized it.
Yeah.
The grant of rights challenge in and of itself, and I mentioned this in another tweet, that is a relatively novel area of practice, novel area of contract law, because there haven't been a lot of grant of rights that have been taken to court and litigated. So there was some successful defense of the grant of rights with Texas and Oklahoma leaving, but that was only 2 years remaining on their grant of rights at a much lower dollar figure than what Florida State is discussing. Now, the other part of your question was, and I don't even remember at this point, but you were asking about, is this new? What was the second part of that?
I don't know. I forgot myself. Do you guys recall what I said? I always ask for help from the peanut gallery if I can get it. Don't worry about it. The second part probably
Sure
wasn't that important. That's what my mom always told me.
You were talking about if this was the first time that we'd ever.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Is that the first
So-
time we've ever seen this?
It is the first time we're seeing this type of litigation, but their clause, their argument that, look, you signed it, you're bound by this agreement not to litigate. That's something that just a public policy is not going to support.
All right, very good. I want to add Jen to the conversation. Jen, I know that you've been having these conversations with both Doug and with Danielle. You've been beating the weeds for the last week on this and in this lull of the news. Is there anything that came out today that surprised you from what you'd been hearing, Jen?
No, nothing. Well, okay, I'm going to take that back a little bit. I'm a little surprised they put in there in the amendment to take away the voting rights. I think that's a wild thing to do, but I also think it kind of showed the ACC's hand a little bit. I think it showed their hand a little bit. And I say that because, one, they allow Notre Dame all these votes. Notre Dame gets to decide who gets to be invited to the ACC, right? They get these votes when they bring absolutely nothing to the table because they're only in on sports that, for better or worse, don't exactly move the needle in the money-wise department, right?
Right.
So, yeah, the ACC is totally cool having somebody with a vote and allows them to throw their weight around with inviting Cal and Stanford that absolutely has shown to not bring any monetary value to the ACC. And now they want to file a lawsuit saying Florida State should lose their voting rights. Well, Notre Dame just gets to continue.
Right.
It's weird to me. I think so. Again, I think they kind of showed their hand here. I think this was this is a strong arm move. I think they're trying to strong arm them. And Doug, you can chime in. I'm not an attorney, but this is a settlement. This is a settlement move.
You're trying to drive people to the settlement table is what you're doing.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
And
that
in
went
what
to the
way is
second
that
part of
the
your
case?
question.
Oh, okay.
That was what you were asking was, has this been done before? And yeah, that is what happened with Texas and Oklahoma. They were temporarily stripped of their voting rights while that litigation was proceeding. So a precedent has been set for that to happen. It's not, what it's going to do is it's going to increase the urgency, to my post on Twitter. It's going to increase the urgency on the part of the judge, who's not going to want to be sitting back and making Florida State sit there as a silent partner. It's going to encourage them to expedite the litigation process.
If I could on that part real quick,
Yeah, go ahead.
would you say this bears any resemblance at all to what happened up in the state of Washington in terms of how Washington State and Oregon State were given some similar power over the PAC and the others had their rights removed? Or would you say legally it's a different situation even if it seems similar?
I think again that goes to being two separate issues: the grant of rights, and that's going to be litigated as a separate issue. But again, to that point, the Pac-2 then were the only parties that had authority to govern the conference as it was moving through this following period. So bringing on other members, voting to include other members, those who were leaving the Pac-12 were disallowed to have their vote and their say. And that's exactly what the ACC is asking for. And frankly, it's probably one of the few winning points that the ACC has during this process.
Yep.
All right. Let's get to a few of these line items. This is a tweet. Let me back up. This is a tweet by Pete Thamel. I don't want to strip away his credit for putting this brief description together. Really quick, I'll just read these really quick. First claim for relief, request for declaratory judgment. That one is they just tell us, just rule right now and throw it out, right? Isn't that what that means?
That's restating what the original complaint was. That's just saying, don't forget, this is the original issue and controversy.
Okay, and then the second claim for relief, Florida State is stopped, I guess as legal lease, by its acceptance of benefits or has waived its by its conduct any challenge to the grant of rights. Is that the same thing stated a different way?
No, this is a very interesting thing, and estoppel is your word of the day. That's your SAT word that you're going to learn from this filing today. So estoppel is saying you're not allowed to do something. So in contract, there is a theory, there is a situation where if I pay you $1 million to do X, you can't take that $1 million and then refuse to do X. You're stopped from breaching the contract because you've taken the $1 million. Well, in this case, the grant of rights is prospective. All of this litigation is about what happens between now and 2036. So the fact that FSU got money in the past, I don't think is an accurate use of the principle of estoppel to say you're not allowed to challenge this going forward.
Okay. Third claim, Florida State has breached its promises in the grant of rights. What is that?
So this goes back to what we talked about in the last conversation. There was a provision in the contract that says you will not challenge the grant of rights. This is a very weak argument in any contract situation because contracts can be broken under certain circumstances. And so what they're saying is, look, if you are abusive, if you are baseless in your challenge, we're going to come after you for attorney's fees. So you shouldn't have brought this litigation to begin with. We told you if you brought this litigation, we were going to penalize you. Now that you brought foolish litigation, I'm not going to feel bad about hitting you up for attorney's fees. But again, in this case, the Florida State argument is much stronger than I originally thought. And so I don't think it's baseless or frivolous.
And do you think that this piece would be, if they do lose, that they would the ACC did win their argument, then they could come back and then they could sue for the attorney's fees or anything else as a penalty? Is that the third claim?
Correct.
Is that kind of what they're going for?
That's exactly right.
Okay. Fourth claim, Florida State has breached its obligation to protect confidential information. Now, this I found interesting because obviously what was revealed is the grant of rights was actually revealed to the world, even though it wasn't ever owned, that Florida State is the one that revealed it. They said they found it on the internet. But there has been other stuff, tradecraft, that's been exposed for this legal dispute. This one I found really interesting. I thought anything you file would be public domain. Is it not?
So that's the interesting comparison between these two lawsuits, and you can see how the parties behaved. When the ACC filed its complaint in North Carolina, several of their exhibits were submitted what's called under seal. So they've turned those documents over to the court, but they're asking the judge to say, this is sensitive information. We don't want it to be part of the public record. Whereas Florida State, they just threw everything out there. And yes, one of the important disclosures that were made in the Florida State filing is this idea that ESPN has a unilateral right to extend in 2025 their rights from 2027 to 2036. So that's an example of where the ACC is coming back and saying, whoa, FSU needs to be punished because they were disclosing things and they need to be ordered not to continue disclosing things, especially as we get into the discovery phase.
And what would that be? What would the punishment potentially be?
There's a whole bunch of things that a judge could do. The worst thing that could ever happen is for a judge to strike an answer. What
Okay.
that means is everything that you say in your answer is null, is invalidated, and now we're just going to proceed on damages. The plaintiff wins because you don't even get to reject the plaintiff's claims. That's not the type of violation that this would be, but it could come with an admonishment. You never want to piss off a judge who's hearing your case. So the judge might say, that might not have been the smartest thing to file. Going forward, let's make sure all the filings go through my office and I can make a determination as to what should be public and what shouldn't be.
Okay. The fifth claim, Florida State has breached and continues to breach its fiduciary obligations make sure I read the rest of this, to the conference under the ACC Constitution and bylaws and North Carolina law. This one I found extraordinary because basically it's saying we want to hold you liable against the laws or bylaws of a conference. What does that even mean?
Well, some of that language is artful and correct. Obviously, as a member of the ACC, there are bylaws and there is a constitution that outlines what the responsibilities are of the parties. But the use of the term fiduciary in there almost made me laugh out loud as I was reading it, because
Okay.
what we're talking about here is the ACC breaching its fiduciary responsibility to Florida State. They took all of the rights in, all the media rights in, and they said, let us negotiate these contracts on your behalf. That's the ACC's fiduciary duty to the Florida State. I have no clue what kind of fiduciary duty Florida State might owe to the ACC. The reality is that there are certain obligations, and maybe there's some language in the complaint about some things that FSU promised to keep secret, but that's one thing. We don't have the full filing. I believe it's about 150 pages again. I tried to go to the Mecklenburg Courthouse clerk's office and download the PDF. It's not available yet. They just filed this at 4:15 this afternoon, and it takes a while for the clerk to scan that in. So the full document should be available sometime tomorrow, but I'm very curious to see what allegation exists that FSU owed any fiduciary duty to the ACC.
So just to follow up on that, the original argument from Florida State's lawsuit was 38 pages. How much is in total is the ACC's counter?
Well, the original filing from the ACC was 181 pages.
Oh my
This
goodness.
filing, I don't know. I've seen somewhere that there was a page count up at around 150. So yeah, they're definitely paying their attorneys by the hour a hefty sum for this litigation.
That is remarkable. Okay, and then one last one. We'll get to this last one, and then we can get to some questions. The sixth claim of relief, Florida State has breached its obligation of good faith and fair dealing under the ACC Constitution and bylaws.
Yeah, and anytime that there are parties that come together under a contract, there is this concept of good faith. You do have to behave. You do have to make sure that you're operating generally in the best interests of the other members and of the institution, of the conference. But in this case, Florida State has been banging this drum for well over a year. So they've made efforts to try to have these conversations in private, to try to resolve these issues in a conference room. But it's the ACC's refusal to make the concessions that Florida State has asked for that has now caused this to spill over into the public domain.
Jen or the panel, anybody else have questions for Doug?
Just real quick, if I could, just to add a little context for viewers from Doug here. When we're talking about the number of pages on a filing, how often would you say you see something with a lot of pages like that, and yet there's a whole lot of repeats of the same pages on there,
Right.
or some of the pages may have very little information on them? So sometimes these numbers, they can be very misleading in terms of how much content is actually there, would you say?
Yeah, when the lawsuit first was filed, the original competing filings, of course, there was a lot of news interest, and I wanted to get up to speed quickly. So I had girded myself for a 2-hour deep dive into this long document. And then it turned out that the real brief, the written portion of the complaint from the ACC was only about 35 pages. Everything else was just exhibits. And yes, in those exhibits, a lot of times they're duplicative. A lot of times there is some additional information. So no, these are not, novels and word salads. And again, the judges don't like going through that. The legal practice has shifted towards being efficient and concise. And the more you say, the less you have to say.
Gotcha.
My dad always told me it's better to use less words than more if you have the chance. Is it the same way in legalese?
Absolutely. Again, these judges have many cases that they're ruling on. They have many cases that they're reviewing. You don't want a judge to start thinking that you are not being efficient with the use of your words and your time.
Absolutely. Jen, do you have a question? If not, I've got one more thing I was going to run by Doug.
No, I don't. Not at this time. I
Okay.
think he has answered anything that I've got so
The
far.
guy, he does come in and gives us answers direct. That's just nice.
Absolutely.
So one last thing, Doug, and then we'll let you go. We really appreciate, again, I just want to tell you, we really appreciate you coming on tonight. It was short notice, and everything you've done for us, I don't take it for granted. This last piece is a post from Danielle Kelly, who we all know, who's also a fabulous lawyer. This summary of claims piece that came out of the second filing, some of the things in here I found interesting. For instance, the statement of the grant of rights and the home game coverage for the media rights, which is what the grant of rights controls, is through 2036. So they're still claiming, even though they don't have a contract with ESPN, they're still claiming that their media rights go through 2036, which one, now I thought that was interesting. And then two, it says the media rights, let's see, I jumped my head here. Let's see, media rights in the conference, the members realized more value from those collective media rights than if they had each attempted to market them separately. What I want to put in a big highlighter in that one sentence is that right now we all know that Florida State has been what, 31% of the total media value of the ESPN contract up to now, and Clemson is another 18 to 23. How can they claim this, saying it's an equal part when we all know it's not?
I think that's an excellent point. And first off, I'm a big fan of DK's. We do go back and forth on these and talk about it. She has some great insight on a lot of this information. At the end of the day, you are 100% correct. There is a disproportional value that each member institution brings. And so that is what has to be evaluated. I think one of the reasons why the ACC needs to settle this is because they're going to be embarrassed once the experts come in and start testifying about what the real true value of these contracts should be. This goes back to what we talked about last time. The original deal that was negotiated was already at a bargain basement discount because the ACC and their president at the time, John Swaffer, was trying to support Raycom and the secondary market for the ACC games that was run by his son. So you have a situation where they already were working from a very weak contract position, and then they put this long-term 20-year contract together with only a 4.5% escalation annually.
Right.
Well, the SEC just negotiated a $3 billion deal with ESPN. Now, I'm not saying the ACC is on par with SEC. It's a more valuable conference to be sure, but 30 or 40 million a year versus $3 billion for their contract. I mean, it's very clear that the ACC is undervaluing their product. And so to be put up there with projections, analysts, let's look at Notre Dame. Notre Dame is not a TV member for football purposes. Again, Notre Dame is a very strong brand, but Florida State, with its history and with its marquee nature, can be 80%, 90% of the value of Notre Dame. So let's look at what Notre Dame is negotiating on their own and compare it to how Florida State's being penalized through this contract.
Immaculate put up his hand, said he had one quick follow-up. Do you have time for one more?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
Excellent. I found this a little strange because this is an amended complaint. So I'm trying to figure out what prompted this. Do you think that this might have been the judge asking them to amend the initial complaint? Is this their attempt to try this in the public court? Because we don't even have a date for this in that court, do we? I mean, it's just...
All great questions. There's several things in there. First off, as I said before, an amended complaint is very standard practice in litigation. It's not uncommon for you to continue doing investigation on your own as the plaintiff and learn new facts. A lot of times in litigation, you'll see new parties that are added, maybe additional people that you find that could be responsible for whatever negligence, there's maybe a clarification. Maybe you realize, man, I let two partners review this the first time, but the third partner, when he reviewed it after it was filed, found some other things that we needed to deal with. So amending the complaint in and of itself is not unusual. Here, you had the situation where the ACC filed first, then the FSU filed. So they took all of the information that FSU filed, and that's the basis for this amended complaint. Now, let me share some new news in terms of clarifying the time frame for when this is going to be moving forward. As part of this, the AP was reporting, and one of our Knowles 247 writers confirmed that both parties filed joint filings in each courtroom saying that answers would be due on February 16th. So we will get the responsive pleadings from these parties on or before February 16th. Now, there could be a couple other things filed as well. One of the things is a motion to dismiss. Either party can ask, either defendant can ask that the other complaint be dismissed. There's a possibility that these will get remanded to federal court. One of the parties can say this belongs in federal court, not in state court. So those are the two things that I could see coming up at some point before February 16th.
Gotcha. Appreciate it.
Greg Flugar snuck in here really quick. He put in one question. I'll ask it because Greg is a friend of the show. He says, Doug, do you consider the ACC amended complaints as a shot across the bow of Clemson and others? I would put Miami in that same boat, who are considering to take similar action for Florida State.
100%. One of the things that are asked for in there is injunctive relief. Injunctive relief is saying to the judge, look, we don't need you to decide the ultimate issue, but we have some ground rules that we need you to help us with. And that goes to making sure that the FSU is not a participating member for voting purposes, making sure that the FSU does not disclose discovery information they provided. And I think all of those things together are efforts to discourage the other members from filing at this point. So they don't want Clemson to be stepping in and saying, oh yeah, Florida State filed and the ACC didn't do anything in response, so let's go ahead and file our suit as well. This was absolutely a defensive move on the part of the ACC to stop other members from following suit.
Could they win the lower arguments but still lose the war?
Absolutely. There's no question a judge can say, FSU, you don't get to vote at the next meeting in April. One of the things they asked about, I believe, was they were asking not to pay out some of the benefits to Florida State. I think that's a little bit more questionable. The judge would really have to feel from the initial filings that ACC's claim was slam dunk before they would do that. Because you don't want to give FSU $50 million or $20 million and then 6 weeks later hit them for $100 million in attorney's fees. So that's an opportunity for a judge to maybe tip their hand as to what they're initially thinking. But that injunctive relief is just the limited relief during the pendency of the trial.
Well, again, we're very grateful you were able to come in here. Doug Rohan Law. And why don't you tell everybody what you do and where to find you, Doug?
Thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm out of Atlanta, Georgia. Attorneys are licensed by the state. So for our national audience, I'm not here to sell you on my services. I just want to make sure that I'm a resource. But if you or any friends are in Georgia, find yourself in a position where you've been arrested or hurt on the job or hurt in a car accident, and you just want somebody to talk to about your case, maybe you have a different type of case, but you want to know if there's some good Georgia lawyers that you can use, love to have you call our office or check us out online, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much for coming, Doug. It's great to see you, and we'll have you back. The more news breaks, we'll be asking you again.
My pleasure. Y'all take care. Have a great night.
We'll see you later. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Let's get a clap there, Moen. We get a clap in the background. Thank you so much,
stuff.
Doug. Every time he comes on,
you almost don't even have to ask questions.
Well, I'm just trying to lead him.
I know you're doing a good job. I'm just saying he's so good.
Know.
Like I had like 20 questions at the start, and at the end I had 2.
Yeah, well, I understand how that goes. Jen, thanks for being here. You guys have been busy.
Thank you.
We've been trying to hook up for almost 2 weeks. How are things
I
going?
know. Yeah. So, yeah, we've been really busy. It's been fun though. It's been fun.
Excellent. I saw you on Mark Rogers today. Congratulations.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Every time you guys just continue to expand, we're letting everybody know that you're out there. So hopefully that's helping.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, well, let's talk some college football then.
Let's do it.
So we're just going to dive right into the mess at Alabama. Okay.
Sorry.
So, yeah,
What is it? Sorry,
Oh,
my
no,
daughter.
you're okay.
Hi, honey. Hi. Okay. If you want to say hi, just say hi real quick, and then you have to move on.
Hello.
Hi, how you doing?
Sorry.
That's okay.
They're at home school. They're home from school. Look, then you got this one too.
Future
He saw
Knowles.
he saw
Adorable.
his sister do it, and so he's got to. All right, y'all scoot along. Go, go, go.
Got
Mommy's busy.
a bunch of
You guys
future
are-
Knowles there.
Welcome back anytime. We'd love to have you guys back. So let's talk about Alabama. So we all know that Alabama is basically burning to the ground right now with their recruiting. And I'm going to bring up a table just so everybody can see the number of transfers that we've got coming out of Alabama is just insane. And if there's any that I miss, you guys make sure you let those people know, or let me know who I missed. But these are all transfers that are going to be leaving, and every one of them already has a school. Florida State's picked up 4? Did you guys
5.
get 4? 5. Okay. So Florida State is reaping what Alabama is shedding. And the list just goes on. This is something else. And I really want to get into why you guys think this is happening. I'll leave this list here. We can refer back to it, but I mean, the numbers are just so big. So is this simply because Nick Saban is a god in college football? He's retired, and people maybe are thinking they might want to try something else. Is there something bigger here? Is Kalen DeBoer gone in there and just butched it up? And I'm going to ask Jen first because you might have some inside knowledge that you've heard from some of these guys.
I don't think it has anything to do with the current coach or the coaching staff that's coming in. I think it has well more to do about the way the NIL at Alabama was set up. The NIL at Alabama was basically set up with Nick Saban as being the draw. If that makes any sense. That NIL is not turnkey for a new coach to just come in and say, here's the money I need, here's what I want. That's not the way it was set up. It was set up as Nick Saban being the draw, Nick Saban being the one to they funded based off of Nick being the coach, Coach Saban being the coach. Like, that's how it was set up. This is not, their NIL is not as great without Coach Saban as people would think it would be. I think that's the issue here. I think it was disorganization on their part. I think, which is surprising to me because I got to be honest. The rumors of Nick Saban retiring have been going on for about 2 years, right? I mean, this isn't
a surprise to us.
This isn't a surprise. And for NIL people at Alabama to not turn that into, hey, we need to fix this. Look, and I can tell you, Florida State, which they got hit with some penalties because of it. Their original NIL was a mess. It was a mess. And it was almost like one of those, it's almost exactly like the Alabama one was. It was not set up without it being just a football draw, right? It wasn't set up properly. It was, so you've got to fix that. I think once they fix that, once they get under control in that, they'll need somebody to come in and take that over. Now, how they do that, I don't know. Luckily, we had the great Ingram Smith, who is of the Nolecast. If anybody has ever watched that, he's an amazing businessman. He took over the Battles Inn, started it, and turned it into what it is right now. But for Alabama, like I said, I'm hearing that their NIL is the reason for all these transfers right now because it is not in a good spot.
Really quick before we go to questions, I just want to say that we were 140 people watching live. We appreciate everybody for being here. If you've come to watch Jen and Doug, I'm sorry, Doug's gone. Rewind and watch the first half hour of the show. Jen's going to be with us for a while longer, and we thank her for being here. We want to thank everybody for joining the show. Make sure you subscribe and follow all of us on Twitter and then turn on your notifications on both YouTube and Twitter so you know when our show will be coming back. Immaculate, do you have a question for Jen?
Yeah, I think what you're saying there is that their NIL, a lot of the money coming in for sponsorship is actually for Saban. Like, some of this is just people putting in money, but some of it is actual advertisements and companies and things that they want. And it was to have Saban do things.
Yep.
So once he's gone, that money's lost, and it can't be divided out amongst the players.
Exactly.
So technically, it is DeBoer. I mean, not his fault.
It's not his fault. Yeah.
And could that be then why maybe some of these other coaches, maybe they had wind of this, didn't want to come? I'm not a believer that DeBoer now, especially after seeing what their AD had to say, I don't necessarily believe that he was the number one. I think maybe he was one of, but I think the other guys maybe turned this down.
Yeah, I think Dan Lanning was number one. And I think anybody who says he wasn't.
I agree.
I don't. I've got some beachfront property in Memphis I can sell you for $20 if you'd like it. Actually, give me 20,000 and I can give you a nice, clear beach. Like, water is perfect. You can see the sharks coming, everything, I promise. No, I think Dan Lanning was one. This is going to be a hot take here, but I think Mike Norvell was two.
Could I say he was number three and that Sark was number two, just based upon the
I
order
don't think
that they came out on Twitter with their stuff?
Well, here's why I don't think they really formally talked to Sark. I think they felt out his interest, and I think they did that before Dan Lanning. I think Sark was always supposed to be the head coach in waiting, and when Texas came open, Coach Saban told him that's a better job than being my head coach in waiting, right? I think that's exactly how that happened. I think they may have felt him out. I think Alabama knew Sark was not going to leave Texas. I don't even think that was serious.
But he was successful there very quickly. So
exactly.
Yeah, I think they probably thought that you'd get some good experience at being at a top level school, a blue blood, and everything that comes with that, and then you come rolling into Alabama. But he had everything built up at Texas. There's no reason to leave.
He did. And that NIL is so different. It's so different than what we are just talking about with what was the Alabama situation, which is another strange thing for me because Alabama, I would think, saw this coming. They should have restructured things. They should have fixed things. And again, if other people in the industry were hearing he was retiring, why didn't they?
Yeah. And that was my follow-up to you is like, do you think that they screwed this up? Did Saban catch some people short? That's kind of what I'm saying.
I don't feel like I know what he's saying in interviews right now, but I do not see the GOAT Nick Saban walking around Alabama facilities going, I think I might retire today.
Right.
I just don't. I really don't. I find that, and he is so well planned. He is so well organized. He is so disciplined. If you really think he didn't have a plan, I can't. That is Coach Saban to a T. He plans everything. It's not believable to me. And I do think maybe they thought they could talk him out of it. That was the only thing I can really think of. Maybe they were like, oh, he's made the playoffs now. Oh, he's got they scooped in for some great recruits. They got number 2, number 3 recruiting class, something like that. Maybe that's where they thought they could make him stay. Like, I don't really know, but I feel like they just thought, oh, Grandpa says he's retiring. He ain't, you know what I mean? Like, it's really weird to me. It's because he did not go to the vending machine that morning and be like, oh, I think I'm going to retire.
I think, and this puts the DeBoer situation. First of all, let me answer this question. This comment from Sarge says, Bomber, are these transfers prior to Nick Saban leaving? No, these are all transfers that came after Alabama was eliminated from the college football playoffs. So Nick Saban came out the next week, and here we are today. This is where I think they've done their program a disservice, and we have obviously a lot of people here that are Pacific Northwest and and Washington fans, and they put DeBoer in a very bad spot right here. Now, I've been saying for a while, at least 4 or 5 days, that I think DeBoer's a 2 or 3 year coach. I think he's a bridge coach to burn through all that post Saban pain, which they all knew there was going to be, this recruiting class being one of them. But I just don't see how DeBoer hangs on for longer than that. Do you? How long do you? I realize what you're saying is they're not leaving because of him, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the ones that are staying, he's going to turn around and turn into a winner overnight.
Well, okay, I think we need to think about, and this is where I go back to Bama fans right now saying DeBoer was the number one choice. Number one, he was not. Number one, his recruiting class at Washington, even in the playoffs, explain to me where they were ranked. What was it? 40? Was it 23 or was it 46? I cannot remember in my head. I'm seeing it. I looked it up.
What number you
But
on?
his recruiting class, his high school recruiting class coming into Washington.
Oh, I don't know. I would have to
Oh.
ask. I would have to ask. What? I'll tell you what. Put that out to the field, and we'll have
Yeah.
somebody answer it. So
Yeah, somebody's going to answer that. I've looked it up a couple times because I've talked about it a little bit. My mind is a little blank. It's 3 degrees here, y'all. You're just going to have to give me a minute.
It's okay.
But that's where I fall away from Bama fans. Look, Kalen DeBoer is an excellent coach, and this is why it worries me. He has done less or more with less, right? He has really hit that portal very well. It's a little. I know that SEC fans are going to run him off in 3 years. I do agree with you. I just don't. I don't see him winning. I don't see him going undefeated. Okay, and that's what Alabama fans expect. Let's be real here. That's what they expect at Alabama. Maybe 1 to 2 losses. First-year coaches are not going to go undefeated. They're not going to just lose 1 to 2 games. I think they could lose 3. Yeah, 29th. 29th at Alabama ain't going to cut it.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. And the people he's losing are all starters.
Yeah. Oh, Washington currently 41. See, I knew it was something around there.
Yeah.
And that's why when anybody wants to tell me that DeBoer was the number one choice, I don't buy it.
I think that's fair. Let's get a little bit of business out of the way. First of all, Bill G has become a new member, the Wise Guy division that Moen created for us. He's the latest Wise Guy into the Big 12 Mafia show. We appreciate you being here, Bill. I was late getting to it because I wanted to get all those questions to Doug, but I don't want you to think that we don't appreciate you being here. And then we had just a super chat come in, and that says, John D for $5 says, Saban's retirement was an earthquake. Saban was a much bigger draw than Bama. Departures were inevitable. Anybody want to speak to that?
I agree. I don't think anyone wants to follow that up. I think that DeBoer is a very good coach that they brought in to do it, but he does not have any kind of a proven history of recruiting. And as good as he is, the kids down in the Southeast probably don't know who he is.
Right.
I mean, and there's so many big name coaches down there that you could grab that they might know. For them to see this, I think that had to be quite a shocker for a lot of folks down there in the South.
So, as a revenge feature here of what's happened to Alabama, how does Florida State feel now after all the changes? You guys keep your coach, you're getting all these high transfers, and your recruiting classes continue to do well. How do you guys feel about the fact that now Alabama is going to be struggling here for a bit?
Well, look, I'd rather eat glass than revel in the misery of a fan base that is as kind and gentle as the Bama fans.
It's
Really,
all love between Florida State and Alabama.
my God.
All
oh
love.
yes, I would just prefer to just catch myself on fire than criticize. But since you asked, the fact that they are whining about how the portal needs to be changed, these rules need to change, when these are the people who have benefited most from other teams in peril for years. I am enjoying every minute of it. And the fact is, if they had just, this is the best point, and Bud Elliott from the Cover 3 made it today, and I absolutely agree with him. If Alabama wasn't, thrown into the playoff for a corrupt reason, I think Nick Saban would have retired earlier. I think he would have left earlier. He would have left Alabama in a better place. They would have had more time to find a coach, more time to recruit, and more time to not lose these players to the portal. So
Not wrong.
you screwed yourselves only to go lose another game. You were allowed in. You were rewarded for losing. And then you did what you did best that year. You lost. So
Karma is real. I have big belief in karma. So
I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
it's funny. Don't apologize.
What do you think,
Noel.
Doc? Oh, sorry. I was seeing what
that's
Bowen's
okay.
thinking down there.
I'm just here
Vince,
to
good
pick
to
the
have you here.
bones.
Thanks for joining us tonight. What'd you say, Moen?
I'm here to pick the bones. Give me Caleb Downs. Give me Caden Proctor to Ohio State. Post haste.
Mm-mm.
Okay, I
Yeah.
can
So
barely
do you
hear
think
Can you hear
Ohio
him?
State's going to get Downs, or what are you thinking?
I'm thinking we've got $2 million waiting here if he wants it.
Wow.
Let's do it, please.
It's in that boat back there. It's sitting right there.
Write a check.
Well, I'm participating in a little bit of hate and pettiness, which I never do ever. But KJ Bolden, if Downs goes to Georgia, he may have to sit.
Well,
Oh,
if he has
brother.
to sit, spot for him in Columbus.
You
Out
know,
of luck.
for us schools out west, these guys you guys are getting are just making us sick, right?
I just want to say
richer.
one
That's
thing
all I
about
can
that.
say.
There's one defensive back that's assured a first-round pick in the draft that's coming up, and that's because of the defensive coach of his team. And if he needs a spot, I think Iowa's got one for him too.
Well, Iowa is, I think, going to get that amazing offensive lineman out of Alabama, Proctor.
You
He
think?
was coming to He was coming to Iowa. He was committed to Iowa,
I
and then
don't
Alabama
know.
stole
You
him.
think so?
I mean,
I mean,
I don't know if I would bet
247
on it.
guys have crystal balled him to him.
Well, there you go. Crystal ball's never
Well,
wrong.
They haven't
No, I
seen
mean
the
they
money
are
that
sometimes, but
they haven't seen the money we're giving him yet. So.
Okay, here we go again. Ohio State.
oh,
They
here
did
comes
get
Proctor
A&M's
to Ohio
AD,
State.
so.
Vince is in the house. Good to have you here, Vince. He says very few players commit to the school. We talked about this last night, Vince,
Mhm.
if you'd been around. They commit to the program, i.e. the coaches program. Not surprising Bama is hemorrhaging players. I just asked the open question is, could this have been prevented? Even with some forewarned information, even with planning and this idea of the NIL collective being reorganized, once Saban left, wasn't this bound to happen?
Yes.
I don't see a way around it. Do you guys disagree,
No,
Moen,
he's
Immaculate? What do
the
you think?
GOAT. How do you match up with the GOAT? Like that's why a lot of guys don't want to show up. Didn't want to come there. It's as good as they are, they're not Nick Saban, and you're gonna lose
Yeah, but
a whole bunch of guys.
I think you also have to think about the job before Nick Saban. I think that's where it comes into play that nobody really thinks about, right? Think about the Alabama job before Nick Saban. And we're not talking Bear Bryant because that was a long time ago. When was the last time before Nick Saban, after Bear Bryant, that Alabama was a premier job?
It wasn't. I can tell you for a fact it wasn't.
To
Yeah.
be fair to them, they've built up their facilities
Oh, yeah. No.
immaculately just
Jackie
since he's
Sherrill
taken
was
over.
never
But
going to take over for the Bear. There's no way.
Yeah. I mean,
There
but
is
that's
no-
that's where I'm going. It's like look, Nick Saban turned that job into what it is. That's
Right.
where I was going with this. Without Nick Saban, there's not a lot of A coaches that want to leave their current situation and say, I'm going to go follow that guy.
Right.
They don't. And I mean, I'm pretty sure, I mean, I can tell you, I heard, you know, some of the coaches that said no were like, this is going to be open in 3 years. Why ruin my name? Why ruin what I'm doing? Why ruin what I'm building to go get fired in 3 years? Now I know, like, I would love for somebody like to get Jimbo Fisher money, somebody give me $70 million to not ever work again. I'll take it in a heartbeat. Let me go fail up. I love every minute of that. And, you know, anybody criticizing it is just jealous because nobody's offering you $70 million not to work. But I think with the Alabama job, I think some fans may be a little upset with what happens in the first year. But if they would give Kalen DeBoer some time, he will win games, I think. I don't know. I'm a little worried about his system in the SEC, but I could be totally wrong about that. You know, the SEC, if you think about it, is not great quarterbacking, right? And that's what Kalen DeBoer is.
Well, not just that, but his history is coming into a team that has a team in place and doing something great with that. You could argue now he doesn't have a team in place and he needs to recruit hard and fast. And that includes the transfer portal whenever he can, because right now he's losing people and he can't really gain anybody until some other coaching move happens. So I think he's going to have a hard time his first year. It's going to be a really hard time. And because he's not a coach that has ties down there, he's a Northern coach coming down there. I don't think he's going to have a whole lot of fans or friends that are really standing up for him saying, give him time. He could become
Well, I mean, I think the Alabama boosters, well, okay, yeah, I guess you're right. I absolutely 100% agree with you now because the boosters are all drawing off of what Nick Saban was.
Right.
I mean, everything about it. And this is the other thing about the guys who said no. Nick Saban being given an office
Right.
in the facility.
Exactly.
And then going on ESPN saying, well, I can still yell at them from my office.
Right.
When they mess up on the field. What head coach wants that?
Yeah, I can't think of one.
I can tell you one that said, hell no.
Jim F says the problem is the portal closed for players at most schools. So Bama has a problem getting replacements from other schools. Well, they can't until the spring, and that would be April. So the reason they're locked out is any coach or any school that's lost their coach, the players have 30 days. So that means Arizona. That means Washington. These players are all free agents, and they can go wherever they feel they want to go. If Michigan ever changes out Jim Harbaugh, Michigan would have the same 30 days. They would have to fight off people trying to recruit their players. So that's the reason, Jim, that is such a big deal is because it's only for those schools that lost coaches.
And I mean, unfortunately, Alabama has reaped the rewards of this for years. And now.
Right, they have. That's true. Yeah.
I mean, their luck has changed. And now they've become actual regular football fans like the rest of us peasants, haven't they?
Well, and that is the unique thing and the best thing about keeping your coach around. Utah has done this with Whittingham. Kalani Sitake's almost 10 years in the seat. Is that the longer your coach is there, the more continuity you have and the better chance you have to building and keeping that culture together. So I think that's really, really important. That's why culture is such a big deal and why they talk about it all the time. Rock and Rant, this is a question about about Florida State and the ACC. Time for Clemson and Miami to, at a minimum, voice public objection to the ACC trying to prevent a member in standing of their voting rights that hasn't announced truly their departure. You're in Florida State. What do you think about that? You think that matters to those guys?
No. I mean, I think Florida State knew they were going at it alone from the beginning. And no offense to any other team in the ACC right now. If you're not named North Carolina, there was only 2 teams that have guaranteed spots right now. And I think that's why Florida State came out first. North Carolina is different because they have to get away from NC State first.
Right.
So, but I mean, I get it. And I agree on the fact that other fans should stop being so angry at Florida State, which they really are. Other schools should stop being so upset, but Florida State can't be upset at other schools for not doing something that they wouldn't have a landing spot to ruin with their current situation. So yeah, I'm not hating on them for not doing it, but I think that maybe the fans should tone it down a bit. I think some other, just the group should tone it down a bit because Florida State's taking all the bullets so that you guys can make yourselves available at some point.
Agreed. Matt Schnuck corrects me. Gene Stallings won one championship after Bear Bryant left, but he was the only one before. As I recall, he was the only one.
Yeah.
I was thinking that Jackie Sherrill also took that job, and he was not a success. So, anyways, thanks for the correction, Matt. I appreciate it.
Mike Shula was like a 10-win season there.
Okay.
Is Mike Shula the one who broke Prothrow's leg?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Mike Shula. He was not a good hire at
No.
Alabama.
They extended him after year 1.
That was a bad hire all around.
Was that? I mean, the strip clubs in Bama liked his hire, though, right?
Yeah, that's true. Sergeant Pickles, one of our members, says we're hearing even more details. Not that one, DeBoer was planning on Bama before the Sugar Bowl, and 2, he would have wanted the Michigan job anyways, which is what we had talked about before that happened. Our AD had a very good offer in November. Yeah, we reported that yesterday.
He was definitely waiting to see what options he had, I think.
Right.
It should be pretty obvious at this point.
And I think the Michigan job is really the one he wanted.
That's what I thought. I was like, why wouldn't you want that?
They didn't come calling. That's why. Jim Harbaugh hasn't gone anywhere. Numbskull News, $1.99 super chat. Texas about to take over the SEC. Horns up the butt. That's coming from Numbskull News.
And that's when I knew I was dealing with a badass.
So Jen, you've been away from us for a little bit. Do you have any questions about the stuff that we cover that we could answer for you?
You guys let me know what you guys think about the amendments today. Like your thoughts. I know Doug was on. Like, what are your current thoughts? What are your thinking of how this works out?
Okay, Immaculate, you go first.
Oof, pressure. All right. I think that this was largely the ACC deciding to play the same game that FSU started, which is the public opinion court. I think that they did this. Now, Doug made a good point that this was amending the complaint based upon what they saw from FSU. But I think that their decision, they put that in, and then you had to meet the media that was all ready to go and talk about it. I think they also wanted to turn it into a kind of a public spectacle, and it's very much directed towards the likes of Clemson. I don't know if I agree with you that there is no one else looking to do anything. I definitely think they're probably thinking about it at least. And so, while they might be filing this towards FSU, I think they're looking off to the side at a Clemson or maybe even a North Carolina or North Carolina State, Virginia Tech, these schools who are kind of wondering what options they have. That's kind of what I'm getting the feel from it is, don't you dare. Maybe they'll come up with a settlement, but until then, I think that there's a worry that ESPN is just going to come out and say, we're not taking the option past 2027. And once that happens,
I 100% agree.
The ACC is in a weaker negotiating position, period.
But is there anything they could do to combat that? I don't think even making this
I don't know. Maybe not.
I think that's the whole argument against the grant of rights is that 2027.
Right.
There's no guarantee that Florida State should have to pay anything past that 2027. I think that's where the negotiation starts. I think that the ACC doesn't want to open that jar of pickles. And I think that's how they're going to get out of it. Right there.
That's a great point. Moen, your deep thoughts there. Give us what you're thinking about the legal brief today.
Well, as the young people say, snitches get stitches. And, that
Do
was
they
very
say that?
clearly the ACC telling Florida State to stop snitching on them. So, stop being tattletales. Nobody likes a tattletale, Florida State.
I'm going to tell them to stop sucking.
I love it.
Oh,
That's
now
really,
there's no
really
need
good.
for that type of language.
As far as what I think, since Moen, I don't know where he's at right now. You've been sniffing glue today, Papa Moen?
Not today.
Not today.
Not
Okay.
today.
That's
Your
on
eyes are a
Monday.
little glazed over.
No.
I kind of want to know what's in that pipe of his.
He's got something going on. This is what I think. I think, one, that it's a whole lot of nothing.
Mhm.
The fact that it was another 150 some odd pages is ridiculous. If your argument can't be explained in a sentence or two, you don't have a good argument. That's an old rule of debate. So if you need a whole bunch of mishmash words to try to say something that is very much easier said, with a lot less words, I don't see why you do it. So I think this just shows they're desperate. And I think they're going to do whatever they can to try to keep the pressure on. Hopefully, maybe FSU blinks. But you and I, Jen, don't believe that FSU is going to blink, right?
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
If
And
anything-
the money associated with that, I don't think is enough to offset any gain that they get.
No, but I do think that this suit here, like I said at the beginning, I do think it was a strong arm tactic. I think they want FSU to go to the table. I think FSU is very saying, we don't need to. We're going to win this jurisdiction. We're going to do this. We're going to get discovery. We're going to embarrass the hell out of you. We're going to embarrass the hell out of ESPN out of anger. And I get that. But at the end of the day, I think they do need to get to the table, have a settlement. Let's get this done. I don't think the ACC wants that grant of rights thing opened up. I do think that what the ACC did today was a shot to, Clemson. I know some people say Miami. Okay. But, whatever.
I like that a lot.
So, okay, I'm going to add them in just so they will calm down.
Okay.
But okay, so I do think it was for the bigger programs not to feel like they can follow FSU. I think that's what it's about. I think they do not want that grant of rights to be open. They don't want it blown up. They're going to say, this is how I feel like it's going to go. I think the settlement's going to be reached, and then they're going to say the grant of rights wasn't challenged. They did not successfully break it, but we made an agreement to allow them to go where they were invited to, and they had a spot. That is what I'm saying. I don't see the ACC ever opening up that grant of rights for anything, because that opens the door for Clemson, Miami,
right.
Other schools supposedly. But, whoever else is on the docket. Yeah. And so, yeah, I just, that's how I feel it's going.
There was one other coaching change that happened, and this will be our last topic, Jen. If you have to go, wave your hand, and we can see out the door. Fine. But Arizona hired their new coach. They hired the San Jose State coach. His name is Brennan. What's his first name, Immaculate?
Adam. No, it's not Adam.
Is it Adam?
No.
No.
All right.
Well,
let's not worry about his last name, and let's hear him right here, right now.
Brent Brennan.
Brent. All right, everybody listen to this. It's only a minute and a half long. Actually, 25 seconds long.
Really, really special. My brother played here. My wife, Courtney, she's here. Wildcat alum. Yeah. I've got multiple family members that went to school here, and I have an incredible amount of respect. I don't know that I've ever felt more responsibility in my life than I feel this day, getting a chance to lead this program.
Seems like he's got some energy for this job that he's just taken over, and he cares, and there's some passion there. From the stuff you've seen that he's done, you might not have seen a lot because you've been busy doing other things, Jen, but he seems like he might be the right guy at the right time at Arizona.
I agree. I loved every minute of it. His career at San Diego State was actually pretty good. I mean, look, they went in there and beat the crap out of Oklahoma State, who was considered a prize win for Texas, who was shoveled into the playoffs after beating them on their championship weekend, right?
Right.
A certain other team who was undefeated beat a higher ranked team that weekend by 10, two scores. I'm not going to go into that anymore, but I will say good for the San Diego State coach. Good for you. I'm proud of you. I love it. Good for you.
Immaculate, I know you cared quite a bit about your trading messages with me the last couple days on this hire. What do you think about Coach Brennan at the University of Arizona?
Well, I didn't know about a lot of this history before some of my opinions on him. I thought that this was actually a little desperate because he was part of the hiring phase last time when Fish, he was one of the top ones then too. But based upon what we were saying just in our last show, this pretty much follows everything that I was thinking that Big 12 schools need to follow. They need to find someone who's going to be at least potentially more loyal to the school than to just the money. Now, there's no guarantees. If he's extremely successful, he's going to get offers. And he might take those offers up depending upon what Arizona can do. But I think you give yourself a better shot at retaining a coach when they have this kind of a history. I mean, you see with Iowa, we see with other schools, you get some folks in there who have some history. And that's what Arizona State's done with Dillingham. So I have to look at this and say for the same reasons, that's a pretty good call. I mean, if he's going to leave there, he's going to have to look to his wife and say, hey, do you mind if I run out on your alma mater? And, that's real. That's an actual relationship in his life. So I think that this was actually a good move by them. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. So far, he hasn't lost a new in major. There's been some guys that are leaving.
Well, no, he kept Fafita. That's the win. If he kept the coach or the quarterback in play.
Some of the guys that are being considered as losses are actually ones that were transfers that were coming in that have actually not even been on the team yet. So, they were dealing with Fish. They were dealing with that whole coaching staff. It's not, they don't know the team. So it's really not surprising that. So really the numbers is just not as much as I thought there'd be. And that, to me, that's impressive.
Moen, what do you think about him?
Oh, he's moving on up to the east side. You got to be proud of people like that. Started at the bottom. Now he's got a deluxe apartment in the sky.
Yep. That's right. Moving on up to the top. I've got a question for all three of you. If you could have the coach at any one of these schools in their position, which would you take first? Would you take this Coach Brennan? Would you take Coach Jed Fish at University of Washington? Or would you do Kalen DeBoer at Alabama? Who would you rather be?
Brennan.
Like as the coach, or who do I think is going to be the most successful?
No, like if you're a fan, where are you happiest? Are you Arizona fan?
Oh,
happier?
you meant happiest.
Happier?
Okay.
Right now
Washington.
It's a tie between Washington and Arizona because Washington's lost more players, but they've got a pretty good coach who's got kind of a resume of winning now here at Arizona. I'd say that just by the coach pick, Washington, but by the overall situation, I might even go Arizona because they have not really lost a lot of key players, and they're keeping their key players, and they've got a guy who looks more loyal than Fish, so I might actually go Arizona.
Okay, Moen, who would you take?
I would go Arizona too.
Okay, I think Arizona has the biggest upside, obviously. Washington
Yeah.
coming off the national championship, Alabama coming out of the college football playoff. I mean, that's scary times. I would be really anxious if I was Sergeant Pickles or if I was Cherie, my best friend's wife. Those would be the concerns because she's an Alabama fan. I would not be happy in their shoes. So I think this Coach Brennan hire could be a coup at the end of the day. Might turn out that was like gold, right?
I think Fish wanted some of those guys, and
Well, I think he thought he was taking
Yeah.
Fafita with him,
I don't think he bet upon them actually caring that much about the school.
right?
And then when the school asked them, "Hey, just see our guy coming in before you decide, see what you think," and by some videos we've seen from the local media there, Fafita seemed to be in really good spirits, riding around on the back of a cart with the new coach's wife. They were just talking. So I don't think they're leaving.
Well, I mean,
Go
but
ahead.
some of those Alabama players said the same thing after DeBoer was hired. Like Caleb Downs was in team meetings after he was hired. Like, we got to see how that goes when Brennan hires the rest of his staff. I think that's when the players will start to realize, who they're going to be in contact with every day, right? Like, so let's see. I think Jed Fish is an amazing coach. That's the only reason I chose him. I think he's an amazing coach. I don't really like how he left Arizona, but I like how Kalen DeBoer left Washington less. So, that's my thoughts.
And to add to that, remember, Fish walked into the room, as per reports, said, "I'm leaving," and then walked out of the door. Basically.
He was there 3 minutes.
Yeah, so for the Arizona guys, I mean, unless maybe they knew in advance, you got to look at that and go, F that guy. Like at least, I mean, a lot of what DeBoer said was just kind of like eye roll worthy, but he was trying. He was in there talking to those guys. Fish was just like, no.
Yeah, but I think the Washington guys said they found out via ESPN while they were working out before their team meeting.
I don't know how he wins that argument either way. He had just been talking the month before in December about he can't wait to get into 2024 and we're picked to win the Big 12, and he was rooting and hollering for that school, and then to turn around and leave, even though it was on such a high, to this what he called his dream job. I don't think there's a way that he could have made that any easier. I think ripping the Band-Aid off might have been the most easy way to do it.
I think Florida fans have to be sick right now.
Why?
Because I think they really wanted Jed Fish.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Okay.
What have you seen from them? I mean, you're down there. Like, what have you seen for their reaction to Fish going to Washington?
I think they're sick.
Really?
I think they really wanted. Yeah, I think they wanted Jed Fish, but I also think, I mean, to be fair, I've thought for about a year when Billy gets fired that it would be Lane Kiffin taking over at Florida. I'm not so sure anymore as of today. I think.
What makes you think Lane wants to stay in Ole Miss?
I don't think he does. I think he wants a Florida school.
I know. So you were just talking yourself out. Why not Florida?
Because I think that I don't know. Okay, we have the August 31st game that we are dubbing the Hot Seat Bowl, correct?
Okay.
Florida and Miami.
Okay.
I want to see how Mario does this year, because don't look now, but the recruiting ability at Miami, what they're putting in there. Now, look, I hate on Miami. But I think Miami might. They're not going to fire Mario this year, so never mind. I'm going to take my whole opinion back. Yeah, Lane would go to Florida.
And I think 100%. If he doesn't go 10-3, is gone.
Yeah,
I think even winning 9 games.
10-3. Have you seen that schedule?
I'm saying he would need to win 10 games to keep his job.
Oh, Lord. I was about to say, because Lord have mercy, I don't see 4 wins on that schedule.
I don't either. But they've been the most overrated program in the last 2 years. So anyway, Sergeant Pickle says, Big 12 Mafia Network needs to revisit this. Who would you rather be after a 30-day portal closes? Fair enough.
Yep.
We'll
Okay.
book it and we'll come back in a month and we'll ask next month what everybody thinks. I definitely think though that I don't know. It's much harder to do the climb than it is to hold on to what you got. And Washington was at the top. So I just think that's a tough spot.
It is a tough spot. And I feel for Washington fans because
right.
that's a tough one. It's really a tough one. I got to say, when people were saying Mike was going to go, I mean, I kind of knew he wasn't going, but like, it just, if you think about it, if he had done it at that moment, God, I can't even imagine. I just don't want to think about it. Again, I don't know. I think Washington upgraded with their coach. Jet Fish is a great recruiter, though. Kalen
Yes.
DeBoer is not.
No.
That's where I'm saying I think Washington kind of upgraded there. I think they might actually get some good recruits. He's got great ties even in the South. He's got them in, the Pacific West. It's the Pacific, in the Arizona area, like everywhere. This is a great hire for Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Everybody, I think, agrees with that.
And he had history with the Seahawks, so I think this means that he really likes that area, which I tend to think maybe DeBoer did not.
He wants a pro job. Jed Fish wants to be in the NFL.
He does.
This is a good place for him to sit, like she's saying, though.
Yeah. It might be. Yeah, it might be.
He could do it.
Who knows what happens with Seattle's hire? I'm a little anxious now, so we'll have to see.
Any rumors? What are we thinking about Michigan? I need to know.
Oh, sorry. I've not heard anything about Michigan. I've heard that Harbaugh took an interview at Atlanta, which blows me away because Atlanta's not known for a place coaches are just aspiring to go in and coach. So I think Harbaugh really wants an NFL job, and he wants that immunity from prosecution, basically, from both Michigan and from the NFL jobs. He doesn't want to be suspended 1 minute.
Boy, isn't that telling?
Yeah, it really is. And Michigan's not going to give it to him, by the way.
You don't think so?
No way. They can't.
Wow.
I don't think so.
Yeah,
maybe
because
some sort of a limited part of it, but not what he's asking for now.
The NCAA just passed that new rule in terms of having someone on who's, I don't remember the right terminology, but basically if you're on strike from the NCAA sanction or whatever he would be, if they were to keep him on, they would face trouble. And what he wanted was that he wouldn't lose out money if they had to get rid of him because of that reason. Right. And yeah, so in that case, why would they just continue to pay you full when they can't keep you because of the NCAA? So yeah, I think he's gone. They're putting these out public for whatever reason, that he interviewed here, interviewed there. And
the NFL does that. They make their interviews public. Yes.
But on Twitter and.
Yeah, they started that. I think it was either last year or the year before. Really? Unless there's like a head coach in waiting situation, but if they're interviewing, they have to.
They have to post it publicly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know this for the first time ever, the Seattle coaches search, and Moen mentioned before that there's that rule. What's the rule?
The Rooney Rule.
The Rooney Rule that they have to obviously get a minority candidate in, but they also Seattle's listed like 12 coaches that they're interviewing for the first time ever. These searches are just nuts, and so. Yeah, it might be a while before we find out. I want him to go to Seattle, frankly. I don't care how he's not a great person, but I just want him to win football games. I don't really care how nice of a person he is. So, but who knows? I don't know.
Isn't it interesting that Jim Harbaugh, a man who did nothing wrong and is totally innocent, would need a provision in his contract?
Isn't it amazing?
It's almost telling.
Totally something an innocent person would do, guys.
It's like those mobsters who would go to the Department of Justice looking for witness protection, right?
Right.
And be like, well, if you find any other bodies,
That's exactly right.
Don't prosecute me because I'm
Yeah.
helping you now.
In perpetuity. Yeah, I want immunity forever.
Yeah.
And all time. Yeah, that's great.
It's like the
Jen,
movie The
this is-
Godfather.
oh
Don't
boy.
don't punish me. I didn't do anything but write it in there so I can keep my money.
Exactly. I like that. That's the way Jim, he is the Godfather right now in this case. We're going to call it there, guys. We have
All right,
had an
guys.
amazing show. Thank you so much for being here tonight, Jen. Thank
Of
you for coming
course.
in and sharing some time with you. We do have a show on Friday. I know you guys also have a show that you've been doing on Friday. So if you don't see you then, I understand. But obviously, you have an open invite always. Let everybody know about Renegade Report and what you and George are up to.
Well, Friday we might just be by ourselves. I don't know. I'm waiting on a couple guests. Next week I will be announcing some guests. We're gonna have some good ones, guys. We usually do. Please always go to our YouTube channel, Renegade Report. We've had DJ Usdad on. We've had Carlos Williams. We've had last night we had Rob DeLoach on, which was amazing. We also had CJ Wilson just for some, he has an amazing channel himself for some recruiting information and portal information. So always give it a try.
We want to thank everybody for being here. Make sure you follow everybody on Twitter and then subscribe to us on YouTube. Subscribe to the Renegade Report as well on YouTube. And then make sure you follow and check out Doug Rohan, Rohan Law on Twitter. He's a fantastic read. Legal Mind is just bar none. I still haven't met anybody who's made legalese sound so approachable. I mean, Daniel's good, but it's hard to talk as clear as he does. One thing I got to say this before I got to go, because I laughed every time when we would say a double question, right? We would say two things in the exact same statement. Every time he would back us up and go, okay, well, in the first part, but then in the second part, and I just can imagine him doing that
with his clients,
with his clients in court. I could totally see that happening. So, Moen, why don't you tell everybody what you're going to be doing the next couple of days?
I am going to be figuring out my outfit for Friday.
Nice.
Trying on several.
All right. Are you taking requests?
No requests. That's a
No
member-only
requests,
thing for
okay.
special shows.
Okay.
But I've got a really elaborate one I want to try. So we might,
right.
maybe on Friday. Maybe on Friday.
I love it. And Immaculate.
Yeah. Things just seem to keep ramping up. We keep saying that, and I would wonder myself every time when I say it, oh God, I hope something happens so that I'm not a liar. And then something happens. Like tonight we have with the ACC and the FSU. By Friday, we might have a response. I'm expecting something tomorrow from Florida, the state, someone from the state. I don't want to say Florida State, someone from the state of Florida. I don't think they let this go unanswered. And I don't think they'd let that sit even for a day. So I'm guessing tomorrow at some point in time we'll see that. And I'm really looking forward to kind of diving right back into this again on Friday. So keep an eye, Immaculate View on Twitter. And of course with Bomber on Twitter as well, Big 12 Mafia, Moen Show. We'll be tackling this again on Friday, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And so we'll see everybody on Friday night, 7 Eastern. And other than that, I'm just going to say bye, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight. Have a great night. Drive safe and peace out. We'll see you later.
Bye, guys.